Okay, but it is 10 o'clock and I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. Zoom is unable to detect my camera. That has never happened to me in my 2.5 years of working here and my decade of teaching. That has never happened, so I don't know how to fix it. So you'll just have to use your imagination as to what I look like. You've seen me, everyone in the meeting so far has seen me before. If you don't recognize my voice, this is Chelsea Smith. I am your learning and development specialist here at Action Benefits to spend time with you today talking about future-proofing your business for 2025 and beyond. Joining me today is my friend Dan to kind of give you some other tidbits of information that I didn't think of when I was making my slides. So Dan, give the people what they want while I try one more time to fix my camera.
Oh, good morning, everybody, and happy holidays. That's it. I'm short and sweet to the point.
Let's go ahead and get started with future-proofing our business. Here is what we are going to talk about today. My secrets to future-proofing your business are as follows. By the end of this session, I'm hoping you are going to be able to assess the carrier state of play, kind of figure out what your carrier is up to in the near future, kind of predict the future for yourself so you can be ready to go if you need to make some changes for yourself. Identify when a plan needs an alternative option and where to find that alternative option. Exploring diversification options for your book. So if your book is really one color, changing that up a little bit. And then creating habits to stay well informed as an agent. So that is what we are going to get ourselves into today. So why are we even talking about this in the first place? Why are we concerned with future-proofing our business? Chelsea, the future has always been happening. I know, but the time is now to start, especially this year, looking at what is going to happen to your business in the future if you are someone who's going to continue working in the markets. And here is why. Bam, that's a lot. Okay. I want to make sure I go over all of these with you because it is a lot. I didn't want to use 2 slides, so sorry, it's a little jam-packed here. But there are a lot of reasons to feel nervous about what might be coming next year. Carriers are cutting back coverage areas, and you've probably already seen this happening. You probably already are aware of this. Aetna anticipates 10% of their members being cut this year. Humana exited, or is exiting, I should say, 13 markets. And especially if you work with us in the co-broker space, you are aware that U of M's health plan is going to close completely at the end of 2025. And that's just the couple I could think of off the top of my head when I was making these slides. I'm sure there's more examples you could come up with as you're sitting here listening to me even of that. So plans are closing as well. It would be hard to say how many have closed for sure. And I'm sure you in the audience remember more of them than I do. But if I just sit here and think about it, I can think about 3 carriers off the top of my head that I know for a fact have closed at least one of their plans this year. And that is just the one I can think of right now. So I guarantee you there's more than one I can just think of off the top. The one that concerns me the most personally as someone who looks at the news a lot is this marketplace, the subsidies and marketplace subsidies and telehealth expansion still being up in the air, right? As of when I made these slides and today, telehealth and the marketplace subsidies have not been renewed for an additional year. So that doesn't mean that they won't be, but they haven't been now. And especially the subsidies thing, if those aren't renewed, that is going to be a huge whammy to your business and to under 65 clients. Not necessarily that your business is going to go away, but that it will definitely change the way you're going to do that business. Many of your under 65 clients, if those subsidies go away, are going to want to reevaluate their options if they're not going to get any more help paying those premiums or get those tax credits that they've grown accustomed to, right? So CMS has also said that their risk adjustments was going to be affected by those subsidies going away. We've learned about that if you were in my Randy and myself's marketplace proposed rule adjustments. You were there and we talked about this already. I would bet you any amount of money that carriers are going to adjust their game plans if the subsidies are not renewed. So we should hear about that soon. But if we don't, that's going to change either what the plans do or what your clients are going to do based on what the answer to that question of if the subsidies are going to stay around or not is going to be. Then, of course, we all already probably have guessed that premiums are going up for this next year. Exactly how much is going to differ from carrier to carrier, but 7% on average is the premium increase across the United States. And then in Michigan, it is a 10% premium increase. So we're seeing a bigger increase here in Michigan than in the rest of the country. So we're getting hit a little more with this need to future-proof than other areas of the country. So good thing you're at this webinar, right? And then last but not least, there's a new trend in recent months and years that health systems are choosing to no longer accept a Med Advantage plan due to the hassles that are being created with payments and prior auths. So if your area has one of the health systems that have started refusing to accept MA plans, or if you, again, hear a lot in the news, you're going to hear me say this a lot. If you hear whisperings in the news of these things, be an issue for your area. If you have a health system that's running out of money or making cuts of any kind, that might be something that's coming down the pipeline for that health system. And it might be an indication to you that you need to do something different. Oh, looks like I see somebody saying something in the chat. Are there any health systems in Michigan refusing MA plans? Stacy, I honestly don't know off the top of my head. If anyone, Dan, do you know off the top of your head?
I'm not aware of any one in Michigan. I know a couple have dropped certain carriers, things like that, but not flat out refusing them yet here in Michigan. I know we're seeing a lot of that in some of the larger, more populated states like California. Texas has dropped quite a bit. So we are seeing it in areas like that, but right now I do believe that Michigan has been spared.
I think you're right as well, but Stacy, don't quote me. I didn't
We can look at that information and get that to you, Stacy, and
Yes.
everybody else as well.
Yes. I want to say they do it a lot in the Carolinas as well, but I might be just associating something that isn't the same thing. Dan, do you have anything you want to add to?
Really, I do. Not really add. I just want to put this in layman's terms here because there's a lot of scary numbers and information up on that screen there, and we all know that this year carriers had to adapt quickly. They had to adapt quickly to the new mandates from CMS as well as the administration, and even last minute lawsuits that were going on that affected at least the Medicare side of things. And when that happens, it creates a lot of that uncertainty. And we all know that when uncertainty happens, carriers are going to pull back. They're going to react conservatively from a business standpoint. They're going to protect themselves. So that does mean, like Chelsea showed on the screen there, that's going to lead to the higher premiums, benefit changes, and plan changes. They're all going to shake things up for your members because really this is about your members. And it's gonna change what they want and what they can do with their healthcare. It's our jobs as agents to assist them with these changes and keeping them in our book of businesses. And that assistance it's going to need planning, it's going to need prep work, and even, to be honest, a little foresight. And that's what we're going to hit on here today, in addition to some other things during this webinar.
Awesome. Yes, well said. It's hard to keep track of every single one of these things. Like, if there's so much to think about when you're constructing your plan of attack for like an AEP, for instance, but doing this stuff ahead of time and looking at these numbers before you make those decisions can really help as well. So yes, like Dan said, there's so many different attributes that play into all of this. But this is not to say to you, let me make this loud and clear. It's not to say to you that everybody's doomed. This is not a doom scenario. I would tell you if it was, it's not. There are tons of reasons to stay in the market. Your clients need you. That's the first and foremost one. I even put that one on the slides because that one is so forefront to your mind. I don't need to tell you that one. But there's a couple other ones here on the screen. The total number of people eligible for Medicare is going to be at a record high next year and will continue to climb, I believe, until at least 2030, maybe 2032. 28% of those people who are in Medicare will be enrolled in a SNP plan. So SNPs are growing as well. 51% of those using or not in original Medicare will have an MA plan. So that's a lot of business that you could be scooping up. 39% of the population is going to be over 65, and we know that's the largest chunk of people who are in Medicare, not everyone, but that's a large chunk of the population that's up for grabs for you if you're in the Medicare space. The number of SNPs offered is going to grow by 9%. So carriers are giving you more options to give to your clients. Multiple action carriers now carry SNPs. This time last year, I'd be telling you there's only one carrier. It's really important to sign up with this carrier if you have any clients with chronic conditions, but that's not the case anymore. Two of our partner carriers have C-SNPs, so you have some options for yourself. And then 20 million people have market coverage right now, more than ever before. And even if those subsidies go away, those marketplace people are going to have to go somewhere if they choose not to stay on the marketplace. So any off-market things might be of value to you as well if you don't work with a carrier already that has off-marketplace things. So lots of things to think about. It's not doom and gloom. It is not, oh my gosh, I'm not telling you to future-proof because the end is nigh. The end is not nigh. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to when you are thinking about how you want to future-proof your business is kind of taking an assessment of the overall health and wealth of the carrier you work with, both overall and on a more micro or how does this carrier work for you scale, right? So this time last year, we were talking a lot about how uncertain things were once again. This is not new. Last year, we were doing similar discussions, right? A little different because we were talking more about Part D plan changes, compensation changes, and all of that. I remember us saying a lot of, well, we'll just have to see how this plays out. And then every few weeks, somebody would find something or think of something, and then we'd be digging around and, oh, does this change anything? And most of the time it didn't, but we just wanted to make sure for you all. But at the end of the day, yes, things changed, but it wasn't the horrifying, everything's gonna be crazy. No one's that didn't happen, right? And with the agents who planned properly for that, knew about what was going to happen and planned accordingly, were less spooked by this than the agents who woke up a couple days before EAP and like, what do you mean? Those people knew what was going on, right? So taking that assessment of that carrier and your relationship with that carrier is really what's going to help you be prepared for when you are making those sales and keeping your book of business intact. So, well, Chelsea, what do you mean when you say carrier state of play or taking the temperature of the carrier or doing an assessment of the carrier? What am I looking for? So I'm going to tell you a story, a little crazy, but bear with me. I promise this has something to do with what we're talking about. So when I was in high school, I loved a show called The Fabulous Beekman Boys, if you remember, back in the early 2000s. In this show, the two main characters would sit down every year at their anniversary and decide if their relationship was an overall net positive. They would check in with one another and change things about their relationship that wasn't working for them anymore. And that really stuck with me as a person, and I try my best to do that in all aspects of my life that are applicable. And if you really think about it, selling a carrier's product is exactly that. It's a relationship between you and your carrier, right? So it's important to take time every year. I would do it at least once a year. Take time to think about, is this still benefiting me? Is this relationship still valuable to me? And more importantly, is it still valuable to my clients, right? So how can you do that? You can take stock of the carrier's behavior over the last year and take stock of the things that had gone on over the year. So the first one I think about is, how are their finances? Obviously, if they can't pay the bills, they're not going to stay around very long. And I understand that it's not really probable the carrier is like emailing out their quarterly earnings to you. That's not what I'm saying that you should be looking for. But just keep an ear to the ground on news surrounding that carrier, right? So if they're a public company, what is their stock up to? Have they been dipping out of certain market, even if it's not your market, right? If it was your market, we'll talk about that later. But are they dipping out of markets in other states, or are they expanding their markets in other states? Are they whittling down their offerings in other regions, or are they expanding their offerings? Have they acquired any new assets? Is the C-suite of the company experiencing some turbulence? While all those things aren't directly telling you, oh, the carrier's still making money or is still in the black or red, green or whatever, it's telling you exactly like what is going on behind the scenes without giving you those numbers, right? You can infer, if the English teacher in me might use that word, you can infer what's going on behind the scenes from these pieces of news, right? If those carriers are doing those things, and you're noticing a lot of that stuff, it might not be in your best interest anymore to put all your money on that carrier's color anymore and roll the dice, right? So the next, oh, Dan, go ahead.
No, we're good.
Okay, sorry, I thought I saw you unmute yourself. So what reactions did they have to the rule changes? So take into account how they behaved when rule changes were announced. So, you know, when a rule changed, did they communicate what their next steps were to you? Did they talk to you about it? Did they address it with you? Or did they remain mum and you didn't hear from them? Are they holding their cards super close to their chest and not telling you what decisions they're making? Or are they saying, hey, we might be doing this, or we're going to do this in the future? When's the last time they emailed you about something or updated something for you, or emailed your clients and talked to them? If they changed something about a plan, did they tell you that change was happening, or did they let you just find out one day when you were quoting for a client? Or even worse, your client calls you, what do you mean I don't have this anymore? Are they communicating to the enrollees and to the public? Are you encouraging, oh, this is a big one too, guys. Are those carriers encouraging your clients to call you or the clients? Are they asking you, I'm sorry, are they asking the clients to call you when there's a problem, or are they asking them to call them, the carrier? That's a big one, right? Are they fostering that relationship between you and your clients? And if they're not, that might be something to look at. So the next one I think about is, how have their plans been reformulated to weather the changes that are going on? Most plans have had to do some revamping of some kind this year to adhere to Part D changes, and that's totally okay. I would say most carriers have had to do something, right? And if the new Medicare proposed rules do stick around, that will probably have to happen again in the near future. But when the carrier has the freedom to make changes to their plans or their formularies, how does that change the way you attack your exploratory time with your client, right? So did this carrier create a new plan with an additional drug tier to combat like high costs with a chronic condition? And if that happened, do you have clients who are going to be willing to switch to that plan? Did they eliminate a supplementary benefit that's super popular with your clients? If that happened, that might be a reason to look into another carrier that has that supplemental benefit still on the table. Did they change networks? Like, there's so many things you are probably already doing as a good agent for your clients, but do this for yourself too. See if these carriers, if that carrier is still benefiting you to have this option for them. Then last but definitely not least, this is probably the most important one, is how are the carriers treating your clients? Because they're your clients, right? At the end of the day, whether your clients know it or not, they are going to associate those experiences they have with the carrier with their experience with you, because you sold them the product. And even if you sign them up with something, they describe them in your meetings with them as an A+ perfect plan. There's no way you could have done anything better. They love it. And they walk out the door with a smile on their face. If they get treated terribly while they're using that plan throughout the year, they're going to go back to you and be like, oh my God, why did you sign me up for this? I thought it was going to be great. It's the worst. What happened? They're going to look to you to solve the problem. And if that's continuously happening to you and to your clients, it might be a sign that it's time to start reevaluating. Dan, was there anything I missed?
No, one of the things I want to just kind of reiterate that you talked about was, and I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide, the communication piece, but getting back to when the carrier reaches out to your members, you know, we all want that direct communication that way. That's fine. But it's, do they ask that member to call themselves to call the carrier like Chelsea alluded to, or do they ask the member to call you, the agent? I know just looking at the names on the list of some of some of you folks that have attended this webinar today, I know we personally have talked several times to some of you about your frustration when the carriers say, hey, give us a call here at carrier XYZ, instead of referring your member or their member back to you, the agent. So that's something that you want to look at when those carriers do that. Is that somebody you want to continue to do business with, or do you want to have some other options out there?
Yep. Well said, well said. It wasn't something that occurred to me until I started looking at marketing materials myself. I'm like, yeah, that's a really big oversight on the carrier if they're not.
Yeah, it's not, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to carriers that they're not intending to take or steal clients, if you will, but we all know that that can be a result, and that is very, very frustrating for us as agents to deal with. So you want to make sure you're working with carriers that keep you in mind as well.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so before we move on to our next section of future proofing, I want to give us some practice thinking about and walking through how we might take assessment or take the temperature, whatever you want to call it, of your relationship with your client. So I came up with I made my own carrier, Swell Health. So Swell Health is a carrier that I invented myself, and I kind of picked some things that I wanted to put in front of you. And there's no right or wrong answer here, but if you could be so kind as to take a look at these items that I kind of cherry picked for you to look at about Swell Health, and make an assessment for yourself as to what are some positives that are going on here, what are some negatives that are going on here, based on your own book of business. So everyone's answer is going to be a little different here. What would you do? Would you stick with this carrier? It's a great carrier for me. It's giving me everything I need. Or maybe it's lacking in some areas, so I might look at another carrier, or I might play it by ear. There's no right or wrong answer here, and I purposefully mixed up a lot of these facts here, and I did purposely leave out some things depending on what is best for you. Keep in mind, you also can give your answer directly to Dan and myself if you toggle to host and panelists on your chat. So take a second, I'll shut up, read the screen, and give me some thoughts on what your relationship temperature would be on this carrier. It's funny, someone mentioned just now to Dan and myself that a lot of this stuff doesn't particularly matter to me. They said they don't have any, the first box is talking about eliminating their most popular MAPD plan in the Upper Peninsula, that this agent doesn't have a lot of business in the Upper Peninsula, so that doesn't particularly matter to them. And if that doesn't matter to you, awesome. You don't need to change your relationship with this carrier if that doesn't matter to you. But if you are someone who has a big chunk of business in the UP, that is going to affect your relationship with the carrier, right? If they're eliminating a big portion of your business for you, and you're gonna have to do a lot of work to change something, it might be time to find a carrier that works better up in the UP. The other one that's being mentioned to me is the small group enrollment checklist. They're like, oh, I don't know what that's for. Well, if you don't work in group, you don't need a small group checklist. It's awesome they did that for your fellow man, but if you don't need it, you don't need it. That's not a positive for you. What else? Dan, am I missing anything here? Is there any other things that pop out to you?
I would tell you just on the 5 examples it changes there, the AI is a big trend right now, and it's talked about a lot. To be honest, those of us that are agents and those of us that are selling things like that, AI isn't going to affect us a ton. Where it's going to be most likely to interact with us and the members are going to be in that communication and how things are written. And that's really what I just wanted to reiterate again. Chelsea talked about it a little bit, but when it comes to the carrier services that they offer, if you look at the changes that are on the screen here, whether it's no longer offering an MAPD, whether it's this formulary changes, things like that, the communication that the carrier has with the member is key for both you and the member. is it, what I want to just talk about, is it written in simple language? Because it's something that the member needs to understand. Or is it full of technical jargon and insider concepts and things that can confuse, your average 67-year-old out there that doesn't work in the insurance industry? I will tell you, here at Action, we see a lot of this communication from all the different carriers that we work with. Some carriers are very, very good about making it very direct and plain speak to members, and a couple of them are having difficulty with it. And we hear from you, the agents, that it does confuse your clients. So that's something else that you're going to want to look at, is that communication that comes from the carriers. Uh, does it work for your clients and how they're being talked to? I'll tell you, if you want some opinions and some thoughts, give your AM here a call over at Action. If you don't have one or you're not sure who it is, just reach out to us through individual@actionbenefits.com. We can definitely give you our thoughts on those. And while I don't want to give examples of bad, because I don't like to do that, I'm going to give you a really good example right now that I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with. Right now, Priority Health is very, very strong with an ad campaign talking about how they were ranked the #1 customer service department. And it's the woman that heads up the team, and she's usually on a couch, sometimes with her kids. Sometimes I think she's even with her mom. These ads are very, very simple, but they make a very strong point. They're personal. They're even, to be honest, they're modest in a lot of ways. They kind of shrug off the, oh yeah, it's my whole team and stuff like that. That is something that our average client can relate to. They're not throwing out terminology that they don't understand. They're making it very clear. And I'll bet you, whether it was this year already during AEP or coming up with OEP or throughout the year, several of you are going to be asked about Priority Health now, just simply because of those ads and how they communicate to your members. So you want to make sure that you're partnering with those carriers that are getting that message across to help support you in talking with your members. That's it.
Yeah, it was funny you mentioned that Priority Health thing, Dan, because I was gonna put that as an example, and I'm like, oh, that's too obvious. People are gonna know that I saw that on Priority Health's website and was
Don't
putting
steal
it
my
as an
thunder.
example. Yeah, gotta give some to you, right? Can't take it all. Okay, so after you have kind of taken stock of your relationship with your carrier, the next thing you're going to want to do is combat those benefit changes with the carriers that you're going to choose to work with that year. We've all had to do this in some form throughout our careers as an agent already. But again, usually we're doing it in the frame of reference of our clients, right? And still do that. That's obviously the first and foremost thing you should be doing. But there's also ways to make sure, like, as you're going through this process, thinking, oh man, I have no way with the carriers I have right now to cover someone with this condition or in this area or with this drug or whatever it is. And then seeing if adding to your carrier weaponry is going to be helpful for you. So how can you go about doing this? This is how I would attack it. So I would take a gander at any hot button plan changes that have happened with your carrier, right? So how are these things going to affect what is happening with your clients? I have a lot of them up here, but you know your clients better than you do. So if you have more that you need to add to this list, or if there's things you don't need to worry about, change as you need to. So some of the ones that, off the top when I was sitting at my desk were crosswalking plans or eliminating plans, plans leaving a region, network changes, prescription drugs leaving or shifting tiers, deductibles and out-of-pocket max changes, premium increases, and supplementary benefit changes. All those things could really make a change for your client. I know my dad himself just wanted to change his PEP plan because of the premium increases. So then again, you already do this as a good agent, but for your clients, but doing it not at a micro scale, just for the individual clients in front of you. I'm suggesting doing this more on a macro scale, on a large scale for across your entire book and analyzing if this carrier really is still meeting all of your needs. So I like to start with the changes that are the largest and would be the most hard for or most impactful to my book of business or hard for my clients to swallow, and then go to the more micro changes. So then I think to myself, where could I move these clients to minimize their disruption and keep the focus on the benefits that are going to matter the most to them? And then I try to guesstimate how many of my clients are going to be affected by these plan changes and might want to make a move. And then I try to have a game plan for any large groups of clients that might want to make a change for a specific reason and have something ready to recommend them on deck. Again, you probably do this already, but doing it for yourself to make your book more directed to the clients that you have is crucial here, instead of just doing it just for an individual client. And then always, of course, remembering that some of these things might be a change for them and they might not even want to switch plans because of that change, right? If premiums are going up 10% across the board, maybe keeping a plan that they love is going to be more valuable to them, even if the plan goes up a few dollars, because they're all going up a few dollars. Maybe that $2 a month doesn't matter to them or whatever. So having that, I know if your book is really, really big, this might seem like a daunting task. And it's not like you need to do this for every single situation, but looking at the ones that are going to affect the most of your clients or have the biggest impact on your clients and having those suggestions ready. So like I said, putting those solutions ready at the ready for your clients. So let's say, for example, the solution is pretty straightforward. Maybe a client's going to be crosswalked into a plan that doesn't have a drug that they take, and they take Temasil, Arrested Development reference. Client takes that Temasil. So you know for a fact that that drug is no longer going to be on the plan that they're getting crosswalked to. So you automatically know that you need to switch them to a different carrier that has that drug on their formulary at the tier that they can afford. Here you go. I already have an answer. Wham, bam. Before you even sit down with them, you can suggest. And that makes it easier for you too. And then there's another option too. There's not just one answer every time, right? So keeping in mind the things that you ask them during your discovery sessions and finding more information might change your game plan, right? So in this particular situation, the client is going to get crosswalked. The client is concerned because their out-of-pocket max is going crazy in the plan they're currently in. But then they also mentioned that the client has cancer running in their family, and that would be something that would definitely put them in the out-of-pocket max territory, right? So maybe they love everything else about their plan except for the out-of-pocket max. So your solution is to come on in there with a cancer plan. Say, hey, you love everything else about your plan. There's nothing for sure that says you're going to get this horrible dread disease. But what we can do is, in case you do, here's some extra coverage that's going to help you with your out-of-pocket max. So let's check your options. A great way to kind of scoot those in as well. It never hurts to ask your clients a second time about those family histories. They might have learned something new in the last year, or things have changed for them. Listen to their concerns. I feel like I say this in every webinar. Listen to whether or not their HSA that they used to have is now out of cash. Maybe they ran into a circumstance with their finances. Maybe they, whatever. Always check back in. Dan, did I miss anything, or are you? All right. So this is something you can use during the IEP as well. So you're a great agent. I know that about you. You already probably have sat down with your clients and done this with them in their IEP as well, but it's going to help make those IEP meetings even faster. Because you have those plans sitting on deck. But of course, like I said before, this only works if you did your carrier homework before you made these attack plans. This only helps if you know that this carrier works for you. If you stumble upon it during the meeting itself with your client, well, that's not a good look for you, and it's not helpful for the client. And you have to come back. You don't have any other options for them because you didn't check them with your carriers. Dan, is there anything I missed?
No, not here. I just would be very curious if anybody wants to put it in the chat if they got the Temasil reference. I did, and I applaud you for that.
Yes. Oh man, I love Arrested Development. We've been rewatching it at home the other day, and I just couldn't help it. I had to sneak it in there. But Maybe I'm the only one who, if you haven't watched Arrested Development, highly recommend. It's a little old, but hilarious. So what plan changes, if you could put in the chat as well, while you're telling me about your Arrested Development knowledge, what plan changes have you seen that will affect a lot of your clientele, and what solutions do you keep in your back pocket? I remember one of our agents at the Blue product rollout was very concerned because Blue had moved opioids to tier 2? Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, or anyone in the chat if they remember. I remember
Some
that being a
even
huge
further.
point.
Some move down even further depending on,
Which one it is.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge point for that particular agent. She knew, and I had her in mind when I wrote this question out. Like, she knew for sure that a lot of her clientele was going to be concerned that their drugs were moving tiers. And I know for me, as someone who takes some prescriptions myself, none of them are like hugely expensive, but moving a couple of them would add up over time. And there might be a situation where I'd be like, all right, well, let's see if the premiums would come out in the wash or not by the time I'm paying more for these drugs. It's all up there.
Yeah.
All right, let me check the chat, see if anyone else said anything different. Someone talked about how they're, let me make sure. I think they're saying like they're interested in how in more than one carrier having CSNP, I think is what they're trying to say. So yes, having a carrier, maybe you're not interested in a carrier for a while because they weren't doing anything different for you. Now they've got the CSNP, you're like, ooh, I want to jump on that bandwagon, have that available for my client.
Chelsea, can I jump in for a second here?
Absolutely, always do.
Yeah, so in speaking of C-SNPs, and I'll get there, one of the things that, we've talked a lot today about some of the changes that can happen and the plan of attack to challenge those changes and make sure that you're still taking care of your clients as best you can. A lot of them are easy, formulary changes, moves, things like that. You can just, move things around. Others may not be so easy in how you react to it. But one of the things, and this is where I'll get to the C-SNPs that I'm going to challenge agents on, is to look beyond this year's plan changes. Look beyond your client's needs for this year. Look 2, 3, 5 years down the line. How many of your clients right now are pre-diabetic? How many of your clients take cholesterol medication? Those two things alone could help lead to a chronic condition. So they would be eligible for a C-SNP, once they're diagnosed with those actual conditions. And do you offer that C-SNP? Do you have a carrier in your assortment that specializes in those C-SNP plans? We're seeing a lot of growth in that C-SNP area. We saw it in the D-SNPs about 5, 6 years ago. Now it's transitioning over to C-SNPs as they're getting more specialized. You're going to want to have those kind of plans available to meet those client needs. So that's where I talked a little bit about your crystal ball and your foresight. You're going to have to start thinking ahead even further and not just reacting to this year's changes, but having those multiple solutions in your back pocket to take Chelsea's phrase there, for your future and for your client's future.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't even know C-SNPs existed until we started working with carriers that offered them. And man, I don't understand why those aren't more popular. They're probably going to get more popular in the future, but
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. So, all right, get more baskets. We've all heard it, don't put your eggs in one basket. You've heard that phrase before. But you might be doing that in your book of business unintentionally, and just because that's how it shakes out. And again, I always want to make sure I'm clear here. If that's what's best for your clients, to have that many people doing that, great. But take stock of that and make sure you're doing that with intention and mindfulness. Stealing another teacher phrase there. So take and analyze in your book, take a look at it, and is a sea of one color with little dashes of another. That might be the case for a lot of you, and it might be, you know, biased because of the history of our company, but be honest with yourself when you take a look at that book and you see that sea of a certain color, right? Whether that be green, blue, red, purple in the case of the slide here, but be honest with yourself. Is the reason that this is happening is truly because your clientele really love this carrier and this network and this whatever, and that's why you're selling it? Or is it just because you followed actions advice, you watched Chelsea's, you know, taking action into the individual market slides, and she said, oh, it's a really good idea to just focus on one carrier at first and really get to know them in and out, and you took my advice and you were awesome and you did a great job and you sold tons and tons and tons of that carrier, and that was awesome. And then one day you decided, oh, I really need to take care of this one client, we need to de-snip. Well, great. And you signed up for another client and you signed them up for a couple, and you wanted to keep that one on because you thought, oh, I'm going to get more agents, or I'm sorry, more clients in the future that are going to need this. And then you don't. And then your book kind of stays this way. It stays this purple with not a lot of red, not a lot of yellow. And then you went to a product rollout one time because you were really gung-ho about it one time, and then you forgot about it. Oh, so now you look back and you're like, I didn't really mean to, but now just look at my book. It's all one color. And if that happens, what happens when there's something happens in that client, or that carrier, excuse me, and they really rip that out-of-pocket max higher? Or what if they just remove themselves from your region? Or what if there's so many what ifs in that situation, right? You don't want that realization moment to come to you one day, sitting in a product rollout here in the office with us. You don't want that to happen a few weeks before AEP and then have to gamble on the carrier being fast enough to appoint you and get get you ready to sell. You don't want to end up in a situation where you're sitting down with the clients, even worse, and you realize you don't have a solution for them. If you've ever tried to get on with a carrier right before AEP, it can take a really long time. You don't want to be sitting waiting around for the carrier. You want to be hitting AEP ready to go, right? You don't want to end up studying the night before AEP a new carrier, like refreshing your inbox every few minutes. So taking stock of that and keeping that in mind. So also in the same vein, you probably started your business with whichever line of business made its way over to you as it just trickled in, and that's okay. But remind yourself that there's opportunities to move into other lines of business as that goes on, right? So maybe you started in the small group space. Those people in that small group are going to turn 65 someday. I promise. Like, those people employed there are going to turn 65, and they're going to want someone to help them with their Medicare business. And you are probably, as their small group agent, the person they're most likely to trust. It is so hard to establish that rapport with a brand new person, but someone who you were your small group agent with and they had you, that's not a new relationship, right, to them. So you have that rapport with them already. Just let that business flow upwards. Don't just leave it on the table. And then don't forget about ancillary, right? If adding a whole new line of business or a whole new carrier just isn't in the cards for you right now, you have too much going on. Ancillary benefits are a great way to add another trail, so to speak, to your journey without jumping on a whole nother highway. As you probably have heard from our other webinars, the easiest way to increase your sales is to turn inward to the folks you already have on your docket and try to help them see the benefits of some of these ancillary products, like a cancer product or a hospital indemnity, especially with those Medicare Advantage plans, or if they have a family history of a dread disease like we talked about earlier. Dan, before I move into my final future-proofing tip, is there anything you'd like to add?
The only thing I want to do is, to the agents that are on board, and again, I know many of you, I cannot stress enough the importance of what she just talked about, something like a hospital indemnity or a cancer plan. things like that. I can tell you from personal experience, the hospital indemnity plans can really, really financially make a difference to a client. And really, it could either help or mess up their entire year. Just a 1 week stay in the hospital. So I would encourage you not just for your own business, but for your client and for your members out there to really protect them. I would really stress that you guys all focus on ancillary products to help with their main plan, what they have.
Absolutely. And they're pretty easy to get appointed with too. So it's not a big lift on your end either if you want to.
Very easy to get appointed with, very easy to understand. Unfortunately, people don't really understand the value until after. So that's where a great agent can make a difference in just telling some stories and sharing some experiences of other members. They can make a difference and help protect them.
Absolutely. So my final tip for you today in future proofing your business, especially in the next year, is to stay informed. Keep yourself informed of what's going on in the news and what is happening inside the health insurance world, and honestly, a little bit outside the health insurance world. So as you might guess, I spend a lot of time reading the news for my job as a learning and development specialist. I read all of these every day. I don't read cover to cover. I have a email alert that gets sent to me. I check the headlines, see what might be knowledgeable and necessary for you guys as agents to know. I package it up for you and I send it your way. You could do it even faster than me if you had the same emails I have. And then I, believe it or not, keep CMS.gov's newsroom tab open in Chrome every day, and I refresh it every couple of days, or if I know a rule is coming out or something's coming out, I refresh it every few minutes because I want to know this stuff so I can help you guys with your business. And being, especially, and NABIB is another one too. I like, they not only give news, but they give events that you could attend to get knowing other carriers, other people in the agency, stuff like that. And then just the regular news, the Detroit news, know what's going on in your area, you know? You can watch us, not to toot my own horn here, but I know things. You can talk to me. Randy knows things. You can talk to him. You can come to our webinars. We post a lot about the news as well, which brings me into my next slide here. So there are a few places on Action's website that you can get some of this information on demand. My first suggestion to you is going to be the LinkedIn page, because you can steal the posts you like on there and tweak them a little bit to match what your agency would like to say about that news, and then post it onto your own Facebook, website, whatever. I personally know the person who writes these, and she gets really excited when she sees agents stealing her stuff and putting them on their own social media accounts and websites, because then I'm helping you and you're helping me. Our YouTube channel is another big one. I counted yesterday. We have put up 63 videos to date. Tomorrow will be 64 when I put this one up. And there's even more that are unlisted because they have carrier details on them, and I can't make those public for you. But we have tons and tons and tons of content to help you out. If there's anything you want to know about that you don't see on YouTube, I bet there's an unlisted version of it, and we can get that to you if you contact us, or it's an insurability. Which brings me to my final recommendation, is to look on our website proper, where you have, as you can see on the screen, underlined the Insights tab, which has a lot of articles about news that is relevant to you as an agent. And then insurability as well. I'm sure many of you have perused insurability, that has news and knowledge on the insurance world in all 3 lines of business that we work with. And it is updated often by yours truly and some of my friends here at Action. Dan, did you have something to say?
Not till the next slide.
Oh, cool. Well, good, because this is my favorite one. So, you know, a lot of these people on the screen, you've probably talked to most of them, if not all of them, before. I know at least one person is in this meeting right now on the screen. Call these people. They're the best. Dan, talk more about your people.
You know, I could talk all day long about it, and we've gone long enough today. I don't want to hold people up, but just remember, folks, we are here to help you. That is our number one reason. That is actually our only reason. So my team and the teams that you see here, you know, with the small group team, we are here to help you with any questions, concerns, concepts, ideas, whatever it may be. Please reach out. If you don't know our team, you know, again, send us a quick email at individual@actionbenefits.com. We would love to get to know you. A lot of the names I see on the screen here are seasoned veterans from Action, as well as a few new ones. And we're very proud of all the work that you're doing, and we want to help you grow and protect your business.
I talk to them every day. They're the best. I highly recommend. Don't just take my word for it, though. Call them yourself. Talk to them. And then just really quick, I brainstormed this morning some topics that I would be looking out for if I were an agent. Especially, like I said, I feel like I can't emphasize it enough, the subsidies and tax credits being renewed or not. That's going to change, especially if you're in the under 65 market. That's going to change so much about what's going to happen to your business. But I will say, as of yesterday, there are a little bit of telehealth flexibilities coming out. The Schedule 5 and 2 drugs are now, 2 to 5 drugs are now able to be prescribed over telehealth to the end of the year. So I know it's not like a big news, but it is something. So at literally every day, everything is changing. Keep up on these topics. Okay, so unless there are any questions, I don't see any in the chat, but that was my last slide. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. learning@actionbenefits.com goes to me and Randy. The phone number to us is on the screen, our LinkedIn. If I don't see you guys, thank you so much for spending time with Dan and myself today. Have a great holiday season. Finish up your OEP if you celebrate OEP, and talk to you next year.